Hi, how we doing? Well, we're reading What Would Jesus Do? And it's really a good book. And we're in chapter 23, which means that we're close to being done, but not quite close. And judging by how good it is, we don't want to be in a hurry about finishing this, because it's a really good little book. And I thought about interrupting everything we were doing just to read from the heart of a child. Chapter 38 will be the end of these chapters, and it a lot of times we find ourselves how do I say, behaving like children but responding like adults. And a lot of times it's best to respond like a child when we're behaving like a child, which means that probably what would be necessary here is Jesus Christ. So instead of responding like an adult, let's ask Jesus what he would do. Or let's read some examples of what Jesus has done or would do. I'm TcYbarra. This is College Campus Classic Hits. We're in Fall Carnival, chapter 23. Claire wandered between the red and white carnival booths that had been built in the field beside Coal Valley. Gold and red autumn leaves blew across the field. The wind carried happy cheers of children who had gathered around the pitching booth. "You can do it, Bill. Hit it again. You're a winner." You know what's funny is that children are so important. The Bible makes it very clear, and so do many other books that for religious preferences, the Quran, the spiritual insights, and the list goes on, that children are important. No matter what, no matter how much we argue, it's a fact that children are a necessity in life. And we don't know how blessed we are when we have children, but the blessing is to be that children are how do you say, a true value of life. Well, God says, "I'll snatch your children right from your hand." And I believe the book of Isaiah, and many say that that's the rapture, because we were just so misbehaving that God had to intervene. It's funny, isn't it? I think it goes further than that. "I'll snatch them from your bosom. I'll snatch them from your hand." And when you read further, excuse me, excuse me, when you read further passages of the Bible, you'll see that God says in Isaiah, "The womb is polluted. There will be no children." And then when you read the Old Testament, many passages, God says, "All flesh from the womb is mine." Therefore, when we think about flesh in the womb versus flesh from an incubator or something made by man, after the womb is polluted, God won't receive any flesh. Interesting, isn't that? Claire hurried to the front of the crowd just as Bill pitched a ball toward a row of wooden rabbits at the back of the booth. Wham! Whack! The speeding ball knocked over the rabbit. "This time," hollered Jack, "one more hit and we'll have a new county champion." "Hooray, Bill!" yelled Claire, jumping up and down. She knew how badly Bill wanted to win this prize. He was saving all his money to buy the blue Blazer bicycle in the hardware store window. Claire held her breath as Bill picked up another ball. She watched his forehead break out in a sweat. He threw the ball as hard as he could. Wham! Whack! "That's 10, shouted Jack. Everyone cheered and slapped Bill on the back. A tall man with a mustache rang the bell and held up Bill's arm. "Here he is, the champion pitcher of our county, Bill Hamilton," the man announced loudly. "And we have a special prize for him as the winner of our softball pitching contest." Claire's heart pounded as she proudly watched the announcer drop 1, 2, 3 silver dollars into his hand. Later, when Bill was alone with Claire and Jack, he opened his hand and stared at the shiny coins. "Wowie," he said. "I've never seen a silver dollar before. Now I own 3 of them." He looked up at Claire and Jack with a grin. "Just think of what this money can buy. What shall I do with it?" The 3 friends looked at each other and smiled together. They repeated the 4 special words they learned to say every day. What would Jesus do? What would Jesus do with that money? Well, you and I, just from reading the New Testament, know what Jesus would do. How do you spend your money? Do you ask Jesus how you should spend it? People who obey God are always generous. Proverbs 21:26. Jesus would help the needy. He'd be there for them as oftenly as possible. He'd give them the shirt off his back. Do you tithe? Do you double tithe or triple tithe? Can you afford to? Will your family starve if you do? There are 3 festivals in the Jewish community that God promises if you bless Him, He will surely bless you for what you ask Him for. This is college campus classic hits. Are we rubbing a genie or a ball? Or is this true? God really does this. God will bless us with what we need. And when we've learned to have a relationship with God, we can ask Him for what we want. And He may give it to us. I'm TcYbarra. God bless you.